September 28th, 2023, Gibson Certified Vintage drops 5 more guitars for us to talk about. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Let's go ahead and dive into these guitars that Gibson has kept back in their vault. Starting things off here, of course, we have a golden era 335, this time being from 1959. For being over 60 years old, this thing looks like a modern-day Murphy Lab light age. It clearly hasn't been played too much because the finish hasn't been worn off here. You don't have a lot of scratching on your pick guard or a lot of wear around your knobs where the player's pinky would drag. The color's still nice and vibrant, not sun-faded. Even the sides are looking relatively clean, and surprisingly enough, even the back is ridiculously clean. Maybe it's just the stock photography style here, and if you get it in person, maybe there's some other light blemishes, but okay, we do have a little bit of oxidation on our covers. These are going to be real PAF pickups here. Something might be a little bit wonky with our intonation with all the saddles down there, and maybe a little bit of wear around the headstock, but again, for 1959, this thing is phenomenal. If you're a collector out there looking for something that hasn't been road worn, you might enjoy it. However, they are disclosing that it has had a refret, if that worries you. And not that we can see it, but they do mention some deep scratches on the top, base side bout where the arm rests. Ah, okay, I think I see it now. But if you want to be the part of the history of this one, you have to call the Gibson Garage. I called them for you, so I know the prices. It's $100,000. I don't personally follow the market, so I can't comment whether that's high, low, good deal, bad deal. But out of the 5 new guitars, this is the only one that's still sitting. Because our next one is a 1968 Gibson Dove. I absolutely adore the original Doves. I love the late 60s versions. I love the split parallelogram inlays that have this headstock style and this specific truss rod cover. Because it's so unique, you have this white inlaid pattern that reads Dove inside of a black truss rod cover. I've just always found that to be incredibly pleasing to the eyes. Then you get the Kluson waffle back tuners. It's definitely looking like this one was played a little bit more. Of course, we've got some wear here and light finish checking. On top of that, they're fancy boys because they get a maple back and rims with the standard mahogany neck in this particular era. And in case you don't know, these are 25.5-inch scale lengths. The Hummingbirds are a little bit more Gibson traditional if you don't like the longer scale and you want the mahogany back and sides. But that's definitely a vibrant cherry sunburst color and everybody's favorite bridge design, depending on who you're talking to. And then, yes, the era where they screw the pick guards into place. Overall, it doesn't seem to be in too bad a condition, and it says the only modification is a strap button. But if you had your hopes up, that was $10,500, and it's already gone. Condition is key for those. Like, do they need a neck reset? Have they had any shoddy repair work? So that's another one that I don't have a lot of experience in the market. I can't comment on. But those are the only 2 boring ones. You know, typical nice vintage guitars is what most people like, but if you're watching my show, you probably like the weird oddball stuff, and the last 3 are just absolute knockouts. Love them. So here's our next one, is a 1969 Gibson Gold Crest. These are very unique late 60s, early 70s Gibsons. They're kind of like an ES-330, except for they're made of Brazilian rosewood. So you get the Brazilian rosewood top. You also get the matching pickguard. Then you get a fancy trapeze tailpiece with a wooden block capping off your negative area. And then you get an inlay within that, reading Crest, where the name comes from. And it's a floating bridge design, you know, kind of like an L5. So that makes it different from like a 330 or a 335. And you get the mini humbuckers. That's a very unique characteristic of these. We certainly have some interesting wear to that bridge pickup. Had to have reacted to something. They're hollow bodies. That's why I say 330. And it's got the short neck variety. At the 15th fret, you're meeting the body instead of your usual 19th fret when you start to hit there. So if you like to do big meatly wheedly solos, these probably aren't the best guitars for that, but if you're just trying to lay down some great rhythm jazz, you might enjoy it better. Then you get to the headstock. Oh yeah, just love the late 60s look. They're very characteristic. Again, the waffle back tuners, the repeating of the Crest logo, everything else just kind of looks like a Les Paul custom, but you also get a rosewood fretboard on these. But it's not just the top and fretboard that's Brazilian, it's also the back and the sides. You get a fancy thing running up here. And then you know what? I've never realized this before. These have maple necks. That's a 3-piecer. Now this one's got checking all over, but besides that, looks alright. But when I asked them about the price of this one, they definitely shocked me a bit. $18,500. Typically these are like $7,000 to $12,000, and you have to have a really nice example. These are not necessarily rare guitars, but what I love about them is they're all so fantastically unique and different. Like look at this one. It's got almost like a bursted paint job. But on top of these being Brazilian rosewood, they all look different. Here's one that sat for a year at $13,200. Now to be fair, it looks like this one has been refretted. And ooh, That's not usually what the neck looks like, but there's some cool wood grain. And this one just showed up a couple of days ago. I really like the look of this one, kind of spot-like vibe, but it also gives you another lesson about the Crest. Remember, I called that other one a Crest Gold. There's two different versions, gold and silver, and it just refers to the hardware. I'm not sure, there could have been some other differences. But as far as exotic wood grain goes, this one doesn't win any beauty contests for that, but the different coloration is pretty sweet. But as you can see, it varies example to example what they'll actually end up bringing. So the fact that they sold this one for $18,500 within hours, I say props to you, Gibson. It is very unique to buy something like this from them, the whole Brazilian rosewood aspect of it. Just for fun, since we're on the topic, I actually have in my personal collection this one. Now, it's still technically a Gibson Crest, using some new old stock parts that the Kalamazoo guys were throwing together for a cool NAMM show. Now, I called this one the Hippo because it kind of looks like the eyes of a hippo and then his big nose. And what I love about this one that I happen to get is the fact that I've got the rosewood switch tip, as well as the pickup rings. It's got a really fancy pick guard that unfortunately is real celluloid, so it'll actually off gas, so I have to keep it off the guitar. And then it's got this great wooden peg head veneer, but it's a long neck variety. However, for the future museum, I think, for comparison reason, it would be nice to have a gold crest and a silver crest. But from a player standpoint, I am plenty happy with what I have. So I'm glad this was able to go to a collector who's going to enjoy it. But our next one here had me throwing money at my screen. Look at this. Custom color 1984. They called it Blue Silverburst. So the 80s was a beautiful time for Gibson Explorer lovers. They had so many different variations, from the E2 to the regular style, and then you get your 1984 style. This one, we're just rocking the regular 84 style. It's got the triangular layout, toggle switch right here, no pick guard. Looks like we've still got the stock Dirty Fingers pickups. This is just such an exotic finish. I like it. So base coat silver, and then we've got blue along the edges. Kind of reminds me of the first run robot guitars, but this is way before that. Sadly, no matching headstock, but you can see the bursts around the edge, all right. The real money shot has to be this. The whole back, the neck, the edges, everything was blue bursted, and it just looks so good. This one was relatively well kept as well. It's got a lot of finish checking on the back, but most of these Explorers do. The whole alder body maple neck combination, for whatever reason, the woods they were using didn't play well with the finishes. That and metallic paint from Gibson historically ages badly. So I've got a couple of Union Jacks in my collection, which is like the peak of the coolest Explorers of the 80s. But then I have a Royal Blue, which is basically the Union Jack without the Union Jack. So naturally I was like, yeah, I kind of would like this guitar. So I was thinking, all right, maybe it'd be like 7, maybe 8,000. Like, we got to shoot high, think custom color. The price ended up being was $9,500, which was a little bit more than I wanted to pay, but who cares? It's sold anyway. Gibson's got a good thing going on here. But hey, I do want you to know this was not a one-off. There are actually quite a few of these out there. If you type in Gibson Blue Silverburst, you're probably not gonna find much of anything. However, if you type Green Burst, you're gonna find it. I never realized it started life so crystal blue, because you gotta remember the clear coats of these guitars ages yellow, so it turns blues into a green. I've never seen one as clean, because usually when they pop up, they look kind of like this. They're green bursts. It's not an overly common finish. It is rare, but here's an example of one that's been on reverb for 4 years now, 7,500. But even this one is nowhere near as sparkly as the Gibson offering. So maybe the color changed throughout production and this was like an earlier version that was extra blue and they mellowed out as they went. Or maybe it's just Gibson's photo style, or this example just hasn't aged as much. But overall, I guess I can't blame somebody paying this much because, hey, it's a stop bar tailpiece variety, so not the Kaler. That's hard to find, and it was incredibly well kept. But that definitely broke a record for 80s Explorer pricing. And now for probably the best deal out of the 5. It's a 1987 Les Paul Custom in what appears to be new old stock condition. They said they recently discovered it in their HQ vault, and it boasts a highly figured maple top and a nice honey burst finish. This thing's pretty cool, but you have to understand the history of when this one was made. So Norland sells Gibson to the Henry J era. New ownership takes over right away in 1986. So this is 1 year after that. The Les Paul Custom doesn't really change until about late 1987 into early 1988 when they introduced the Bill Lawrence, the original series pickups. But as far as the way that the Customs look, you don't really see them change until like 1993-ish when the Gibson logo starts to change into what we consider the modern day Custom. So while this one's not necessarily Norland era, it has all the Norland era specs yet. Most 87s would look something like this in this finish. It'd be a 3-piece top, not heavily flamed, but finding a 2-piece flamed version is not necessarily unheard of. But let's be real here. That's pretty good for 87. Gold's looking just about as perfect as it can be. You still have the plastic over the pick guard. Always love that look. Unfortunately, our knob's a bit damaged. Then, of course, we can look on over to the back. Now, this is something that's different. If you go for a 70s tobacco sunburst, you actually get the burst on the back, the sides, the neck. I think it's around 1982 is when they start to switch over to just spraying the heel, and that lives on throughout the 90s. So that's the one thing that makes these more tobacco-y sunburst ones not quite as special. But wait till you guys hear the price tag on this one. $8,000. Now, to put things into perspective for you, this guitar in, lightly played condition on the used market, I would assume it could bring probably between $5,000 and $7,000, assuming some wear. Now add in the minty status, the NOS look and vibes, I honestly think they should have priced this one at $10,000. Trust me, there are custom collectors out there that it's the upper echelon of examples that look like this one and that are minty, that can bring insane premiums over the regular player's grade stuff that shows up all the time. So I'm not going to say it was a steal, but it was definitely a good deal for somebody who's in the market for something like this. So there you go, my friends. Those were the 5 new offerings within Gibson's Certified Vintage Collection. Let me know which one was your favorite down in the comments. But since we have a little bit of time left tonight, I thought we would talk about some new releases. Hey, would you look at that? I called it. Tuesday, we get the Les Paul Supreme. They did come out to be $4,000. They're offering them in Fireburst, Dark Wine Red, and Translucent Ebony Burst. I am going to review one, so I'm just going to keep this really short. Basically, yeah, just turned out to be the Les Paul Modern, but a little bit more dressed up, so more on that shortly. However, they gave us the real shocker, a Gibson.com exclusive. And oh wow, yeah, I almost like it better than the other ones that are fancy with the flame tops, because that 3 humbucker look being offered from Gibson USA, that's kind of a big deal. Basically your trade-off being no flame top, get a middle humbucker. And then the yearly Joe Bonamassa October release came out. This time it's a 63 SG Custom. Seems really expensive for not having the Gibson pickups like some of the previous offerings we've gotten, but it's kind of cool. It's a red SG. I'll pick one up to document it because I enjoy these annual releases. All right, troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.